Raise your hand if you were at the monthly gather or the big kind of workshop. Amazing. Can you believe that was 2 months ago? One of the big pieces of feedback from the day-long workshop was like, we need a micro goal. Like your goal that we all work together to collaborate differently to grow the economy is a little too broad for this moment, which is the ultimate goal. But my micro goal for you today is that you have one new idea about how to market what you do or what you offer or what you need, and that you feel inspired by it. So a new idea that you're actually kind of like into and compelled towards, that's my micro goal. And this is an extension of what we started in November. And if you were there, you know that we had this conversation about how this Ely for Ely program started with a day-long workshop, and now it's continuing with monthly gatherings. And we hope to augment it with resources. And I don't know exactly what it will look like, but the idea is the planning committee is hoping to create an infrastructure through which we are all in conversation more, and we can share information in more powerful ways and be more impactful. So it's not just an event, it's actually an ongoing process, right? We're going to meet here monthly, and these are meant to be the kind of thing that you can pop into, or if you miss a month, that's okay. It's not like a curriculum that builds on itself, but hopefully they're compelling enough that you want to make it to all of them. And it's not just a meeting, it's a mindset, and it's a mindset about learning together, working together, collaborating. I am a huge proponent of social opportunities, but like what I think what's unique about this is like it's work. We're here to like talk about work, to share about work. Maybe you know me outside of work and I'm compulsively talking about work, but I'm just passionate about it. But this is a space where like that is welcome and encouraged. And here today, we're specifically trying to talk about marketing and Ely specific marketing tactics. And I'm a word nerd, so what I always do is go to dictionary.com. Any dictionary.com fans? Any word nerds? Maybe your word nerdness is not associated with dictionary.com. So I looked up the meaning of marketing, the act of buying or selling in a market, the total of activities involved in the transfer of goods from the producer or seller to the consumer or buyer, including advertising, shipping, storing, and selling. And I was like, oh, really? That's what that means? So I looked up synonyms and I was like, maybe this isn't the word I wanted. Like, I just like, oh, this isn't really what I thought I was going to be talking about. So I was like, oh, I'm here to talk about advertising. Semantically, I don't know if it makes a difference. It's only a little intimidating that there are like marketing professionals here. But advertising, conversely, is the act or practice of calling public attention to one's product, service, need, etc., especially by paid announcements in newspapers, magazines, over radio or television, on billboards, etc. To use the term advertising in a sentence, the example is to get more customers by advertising. I wanted to linger on that, so I wrote it out by hand, and I have a compulsion of doing that. I'm very passionate about handwriting things. So let us linger. Advertising is the act or practice of calling public attention to one's product, service, or need, especially by paid announcements. As an example, to get more customers by advertising. Okay, if you're into QR codes and if you have a free associating rabbit hole brain like me, I invite you to check out this Scientific American article about the power and importance of handwriting. Quick little rabbit hole. But I'll give you the TLDR right here, right now. When taking notes by hand, it's often impossible to write everything down. So in the example of a study that was done, the students had to actively pay attention to incoming information and process it. And in the moment, they had to prioritize it, consolidate it, and try to relate it to things they've learned before. And that conscious action helps them retain the information more. And there was all this, like, they had neuroscientists studying brain activity while students were writing by hand versus typing. And so that's in part why we made some notebooks available to you today. I mean, you do what you do, you learn how you learn. But I have this here to kind of remind us that this is meant to be a learning activity, a professional development activity. And so however you learn best, please engage with that. I definitely in my life have proven to myself that I learn best by handwriting my notes. Okay, so going back to calling people's attention, that's what we're here to figure out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Okay, different rabbit hole, and I'm not going to go down this one very long, but have like getting people's attention is like the biggest industry in the world, literally. And the attention economy is something that people are increasingly paying attention to. And I guess I put this here just to remind us that this is no small task. Getting people's attention is no small task. But what makes us really lucky here in Ely is that we have so much infrastructure for word of mouth communication. And we have so much infrastructure for being able to kind of circumnavigate this, what I think is kind of like an icky reality about the attention economy. But if anyone wants to talk about any of these resources later, I'm happy to do that. I just recognize that's not what we're here for today. We're here today to figure out, to acknowledge, like, we're trying to get people's attention. And then once we have it, we have to communicate something. But first, it's kind of like, well, whose attention are you trying to get? And then once you have their attention, are you clear on what it is that you're trying to communicate? So I encourage you, I'm just going to pose 4 questions and give a couple moments of silence for you to ponder this privately, quietly. Do you know your audience? You know, when we talk about getting their attention, do you know whose attention you have access to getting? And are you content with that? Is your audience and you feel good, you have a communication channel with them and you know who they are? Or is that true, but you also are trying to grow that, right? You have your audience and then you have your prospective dream audience. And do they require different messages? Do you know your message? And if you know your message like the back of your hand, is it time to update your message? Has your message changed? Does your audience assume they know your message so they don't pay super close attention when you communicate because they feel like they know your message? Time for pondering. Time for me to look at my notes. When we talk about getting people's attention and we talk about communicating something, when we talk about advertising, my mind sometimes goes to like mass media type stuff, but it doesn't have to. I'm curious if you would be willing to just talk in small groups for a couple of minutes about what is something that has really successfully gotten your attention lately. And that could be broadly mass media, or it could be very Ely specific, very small community. But at your tables, and maybe this table, especially break up into 2 groups, talk for a couple minutes about what is an advertisement or an effort to get your attention that worked recently. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to skim through these, but there are some basics that we have in Ely for communicating messages that I hope you're aware of. And if someone asks, how do you know what's going on? These are the go-to things that I talk about with people, and they're in no particular order. I'm embarrassed because the podcast is listed as number 2. But the What's Up Ely Facebook group, it is a useful resource for communicating events that you didn't know about in time to put in something like the Ely Times, right? So I do encourage people to be on the What's Up Ely Facebook group and skim selectively, but if you see an advertisement for an event, that's a great place to to be aware of that. We have 2 active local podcasts and more coming. And we try to put an event roundup in every What's Up Ely podcast episode. And Brett usually puts a timestamp on when the event roundup starts. So if you don't have time to listen to like the interview with the featured guest, you can just skip to the event roundup and you can put it at 1.5 speed and get the intel you want. The Ely Summer and Winter Times, we'll talk more about that in a bit. We have 2 local newspapers, plus all of the regional newspapers that I think people should be more engaged with potentially for community announcements and stuff like that. And then, of course, the Ely.org event calendar. If you were at the workshop, you know that we're encouraging people to get more into using that. But I think the most important thing is word of mouth, because that is so powerful. And look at pictures of dogs help a lot, okay? Look at, that's Zoe, Megan, stop. Yeah. But there are more specific tactics, and I'm gonna like bust through these because I would like us to hear what they are and then generate more ideas, okay? Develop an event aesthetic so that it's consistent. People see the graphic in your email, the graphic on Facebook, the poster around town, the ad before the movie. It has all one aesthetic. And you're like, oh, that pseudo twine that was made on Canva, like that's a collage. Like I see that twine and I know books is going to be fun. And you have this like, I mean, we're trying to psychology people's brain, right? We're conditioning them to remember about your event. Yeah, so have an aesthetic, mood board it, that would be fun, create a graphic, and then make sure that all of that information is on your website. Submit your event to Ely.org, submit the details of your event to the Summer or Winter Times. Note that winter events are due in October, summer events are due in April, and Johnny is your primary contact for that. Entrepreneurial Room of People, she gave me permission to float that she is going to be in the market to sell the Ely Summer and Winter Times. And that is a long-standing 27-year-old profitable business that is part-time. It also comes with the Boundary Waters and Quetico calendar. And please note that she's available for discussion about a slow purchase or immediate hand. Like, you know, you could contract for deed it, or you could purchase it outright. But that's not. She gave me permission to tell you that. Okay. Send an email invitation to your audience, and bonus points for sending personalized messages as well as the general emails. I heard this group talking about the power of personalization in your invitation and in your ask, but people can sniff it out if you fake it. Okay. Make sure to include your event in your newsletters, partner with another organization and say, hey, I've got this event coming up. I would love for us to collaborate in some way, and whatever it has to be, so that the end result is that you send an email to your entire audience about this event. What can I trade you for that, right? People are not going to share their contact list with you, but maybe they'll straight up send an email to their contact list for you, right? Print posters at the Ely Echo, and it's not cute yet, but we have a list of places where you might hang a poster across the whole Arrowhead region. So stay tuned for that forthcoming. Thank you, Brett Ross and Jacob White. The Ely Echo and the Timber Jay, or I would add to this, the Mesabi News Tribune. What other regional newspapers do people pay attention to? The Hometown Journal. We have the Shopper. Northern Wilds. Yeah, that's a magazine type thing, right? Oh, okay. Yeah. So yes, you can place an ad, but you could also send them a press release. Hey, we have this new program, or I'm famous for being the best at coordinating 90 volunteers, but now I need 100. This is a news story, and I'm sharing it as a news story. Now you got to ask me questions and write an article about it. You don't have to, you don't control them, but you've got to send a press release in order for them to know that they should ask you questions about it, right? If you can't afford an ad, press release it and see what happens. Or make a community announcement. Plus the Ely Echo, they put an advertisement for Join or Die in the paper. We didn't ask them to do that. That's so cool. Create a Facebook event. Don't forget about that. Once you create your Facebook event, post engaging content, and then ask key members of your audience to cultivate engagement. Jacob is really good at this. Yeah. Because Jacob will make something online and then he'll send it and be like, hey, will you like give this some action? You know, like it, share it, do some stuff. You know, like it's the algorithm, right? It's going to boost things that have attention and engagement. So you have to do the work of cultivating baseline engagement to get more people to engage, to elevate it. I'm sorry, it's real. Of course, then once you've made your Facebook event, once you've made it engaging and got some action in there, then post it to the What's Up Ely Facebook group. Whoa, again with a personalized message. Hi, my name's Lacey. It would mean a lot to me if you could come to this movie tonight. It's happening at 6 p.m. It's free. Spend $10 on concessions. You don't have to, it's free. Consider getting a marquee at the State Theater. What a way to get people's attention. Consider placing an ad before movies at the theater. Make a community announcement at Tuesday group, totally free. At noon every Tuesday, excluding the month of December, you can just show up and speak for 2 minutes and say whatever you want people to hear. And it's a really engaged audience. And we've been averaging 64 attendees a week. Yeah, it's wild. And that could, you know, who knows what will happen in April in the depths of shoulder season. But imagine that you can get your message out to 30 engaged listeners plus each week. Let me know if you want to be a featured guest in the What's Up Ely podcast, or you simply want your event in the event roundup. It helps me a lot if you write like 2 sentences and send in an email like for the podcast. Like I try really hard to follow people's newsletters and put together a list of upcoming events to feature, but it's great if you can just say specifically what you want. Yes, Jess? Right. Right. What are the deadlines, especially in the context of the podcast, but for all of these different things? I think that it makes sense. For the podcast, we do 2 episodes a month. So I would encourage you to send a snippet or a blurb with a month's notice. Because what if I just got done recording the most recent episode and I'm not recording again for 2 whole weeks? So I think the ideal timeline is to be trying to get blurbs out like this a month in advance at least. But some events are super chill and some events are like major caliber. Like when the Rotary Club hosted Casino Night, that was like a large caliber event. We were spending money, we were coordinating huge details. I would say that I would call it a high caliber event. And so for that, it's like, I'm trying to work like 3 months out, you know? We record the What's Up Ely podcast on the 1st and 3rd Monday of the month. And then we try to actually push those, the team, thank you, Alicia, pushes those notifications out on social media, usually like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you could just say the 1st and 3rd Friday of the month is when the episode will go live. Does that help? More creative ideas that are sort of less like for everything you do, but make a yard sign. And I know I've been talking a lot in the context of the event, but I love that the dictionary.com definition of advertising talked about advertising in need, right? I have a need for volunteers. And sometimes I would share my own personal story of having gotten caught up in thinking I know like what people know, right? Like, oh, everybody gets asked to, you know, I'm sorry, but I had this moment happen where I thought like everybody gets asked to be on boards. It's people are fatigued of it. I've heard like truly people will walk up to a stranger and be like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. You're new to town. Do you want to be the treasurer of this organization I'm on? And like, that's a bad look. I don't recommend that, right? So I had this sort of assumption that that was happening everywhere all the time to everyone. And then I was in a room of people talking about it, and like 5 people were like, no one has ever asked me to be on a board, and I would love to be on a board, right? Like, don't underestimate the power of just saying what you need and putting it out there, and because maybe people aren't aware that you need them. Create table tents and ask local restaurants if you can display them, or other places where you know there will be traffic. This is my favorite one. Develop an idea for a piece of performance art. That'll get people's attention. I'm thinking everyone wears the same absurd hat to tonight's movie night, And people are like, why are you wearing this hat? And then everyone's like, because we're promoting the Great Nordic Beard Fest, obviously. Is that performance art? I don't know if I used the phrase wrong. Print business cards promoting your event and give them out to people around town. What else? Even I wonder what would happen if you submitted a trivia question or 5. You know, like what if you created one of the sections of the trivia game? And this whole round is like an educational opportunity to learn about Sean's construction business. Sorry, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that the people who plan trivia will definitely accept all of your questions. I'm just saying, why don't you just be bold and like asking for what you want and go ahead and just do it, you know?
We do have an easy section.
Actually, I love that because that is a really good example of my next point, and I realize what time it is, and I'm so sorry. But the idea of synergy, Jacob knows I've been like on this since 2023. The interaction of elements that, when combined, produce a total effect that is greater than the sum of its individual elements. You know, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In mass media communications or like business development, it's sort of like thinking about horizontal integration and synergy, like the same people who own Pepsi own Cheetos. So there's a commercial where someone's eating Cheetos and Pepsi. You know, like the same people who own the TV show Friends own the coffee brand Central Perk. You know, like I think if we can start thinking about all of us as if we work for the same business, the same company, and that company is Ely. And how can we create synergy in the same way that bigger businesses and bigger media institutions are creating synergy? And that is exactly what's happening with History Happy Hour and the trivia night, right? Because every time Jess hosts a History Happy Hour, she reminds people about trivia night. And every time trivia night hosts or poses questions, they include one from History Happy Hour. And that is the kind of deeper thinking and deeper collaboration I hope we can get to do. Because I think our biggest opportunity for promoting ourselves and what we offer and what our needs are is in person. And I think that's at the events that people are attending. So how can we use one event to promote another? And excuse me for being like self-serving here, but the images I had were from the Ely Masked Singer event. Congratulations, Jess Edberg, on being the winner of that. But I was given airtime in between singers, right? So I used that to promote the wine tasting at Northern Grounds and the wine selection, the Ely Folk School, sauna hats, the steam sauna, Mealy's, Chapman Street Books, and Paragus Northwoods Company bookstore where you can custom order stuff, and Dorothy Moulter Museum and Root Beer. So how, like if you're hosting an event, who else could you give airtime to? And if you want to promote an event, what's coming up in the months preceding your event that you could help out at to get that kind of airtime? I'm going to just give us a heads up to what's coming up and wrap this up and then give you time to discuss these things. But I do want you, before we leave, to think about what are the last few events you attended here, or what are the last few businesses you patronized? What are the last few volunteer needs you responded to? And how did you hear about them kind of in this context? So we'll loop back to that. Earlier, when you were thinking about like strategies that got your attention, I wonder if you could consider how could it be adapted to be kind of Ely-fied? I want to keep this conversation going. So your homework, which is totally optional, is to consider what else, like what more specific could we dig into here? Do people want to learn about SEO optimization? We've already done a Canva basics class, but we could do another one. You know, like when you think about like skills, what are you looking for in skill development? Thinking about who you might partner with for that synergy factor. Don't forget about your clock dates. And don't forget about the movie tonight. So those are the optional homework pieces. But as we are kind of wrapping this up and you are on your way, the discussion opportunity is what are the last few events you attended or needs that you served or businesses you patronized and how did you hear about it? With that, I release you to have that conversation. I guess as a closing, I'll say this is experimental. So this model, this format is experimental, but I hope you see value in it. I hope you connect with each other. Peace and blessings.